A federal high court sitting in Kano has fixed June the 13th for ruling on the dispute surrounding the Kano State Emirate saga. The court, presided by Justice Abdullahi Mohammed, was supposed to, on Thursday, rule on the issue of jurisdiction, but adjourned the sitting to June the 30th following a heated argument between both counsels. Now, some of the respondents, Aminu Baba, Dan Agudun, Dawanki Baba, all of the Kano Emirate, had approached the court asking that it restrain the state government and its agencies, including security agencies, from enforcing, implementing, and operationalization the repealed law.
We had our news central correspondent in Kano, Emmanuel Bagudu, who will be joining us in a bit. And he, captured exactly what had happened inside of the courts. We'll be talking to Mr. Emmanuel Bagudu in a minute. But first off, we also have joining us Mr. Johnson Omede, Managing Partner, Vasanta Advocates and Legal Consultants. Mr. Johnson, you are welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you for doing this with us. Let's get started, shall we? How do you think the outcome of this ruling could, the ruling so far, we understand that they've been called to the CJN had called both parties concerning the conflicting order. But how do you think that the outcome of the ruling could impact the overall situation in the Kano Emirate and the relationship between the state government and the Emirate?
Thank you very much. It's fundamental that we understand the law is not a respecter of anyone. And what the justices of the courts are called to do is to apply the law, irrespective of who is behind the scene. And so whatever the outcome of the judgment will be, parties expectedly are to obey and comply. And so we're not looking forward to any disparity of relationship. We're not looking forward to any breakdown of law and order. What we expect all parties regarding this issue, irrespective of what the decision of the court will be, is that ultimately, when the court's decision comes out, all parties must comply because the court is not a respecter of man. So that's it.
Okay, so Mr. Johnson, we also want to find out what the possible implications for Kano State government and its agencies could be, as well as for the Kano Emirates, depending on the court's ruling. What could they be looking forward to?
Okay, because this matter is sub judice, we are careful not to preempt the court. But let me state quickly that what has transpired over the period has to do with an activity that borders on the exercise of the legislative powers of the House of Assembly of Kano State. The House of Assembly came up with a repeal bill that actually repeals some laws that has to do with the Emirate. And those laws were the laws that actually led to the deposition of the 14th Emir of Kano and the installation of the 15th Emir of Kano. And then the same legislative power was exercised in 2024 to remove the 15th Emir of Kano and install the 14th Emir, now the 16th Emir of Kano. Now, these are legislative powers and exercise that has been carried out. And this power is bestowed upon the House of Assembly by the Constitution. And the same law haven't been made assented to by the governor, become the extant law that applies to activities as it relates to deposition, appointment, installation, and the continual exercise of the power of the Emirate. And so, being the extant law, it is the law that speaks on the issue of the Emirate at this time. Now, the case before the court, understandably, is the issue that relates to some injunctions that were obtained, particularly with reference to the injunction obtained from the court presided over by Honorable Justice Liman. Justice Liman gave an order to stop the Kano State House of Assembly or from taking the law to the governor for ascension. That was done after the governor had assented to that law. and it became extant. So the question that people now ask, or lawyers like us we ask, is that can an injunction stop an act that is completed? And from decided cases all the way from the Supreme Court till now, no injunction of court can stop cases or activities or actions that are already completed. And as such, given that injunction by way of ex parte application, the justice of the court may not have, at the point in time, be abreast with the situation of what transpired prior to the time the case came to the court. Again, being a chieftaincy issue, one will want to ask, is the Federal High Court of Nigeria a court of law that could determine, answer, or profile solution to the questions brought before it on issues of chieftaincy? These are the angles, and these are the issues that the court has been addressed upon, and the ruling is.
Mr. Johnson, I think you just hit all the buttons there when you talked especially about the timing of these court orders, when they were given and how they were supposed to be followed through with. And that's one thing that most people aren't absolutely clear of. However, let's go back to the beginning, the genesis of this, when the 14th Emir was deposed himself, and this was by the former governor Ganduje. Now, we had these issues, but they were not as the furor about it was not as what we see currently. Why was it so easy back then to just simply rule on the legislation to get the 14th Emir out? But right now, trying to depose the 15th is becoming a problem. What's the discrepancy here?
Okay, so the discrepancy, there is no discrepancy. You know, for every activities that relates to issues that are contentious, there are actors. Some actors can be considered as responsible actors who are willing to obey an action that is considered as an executive action backed by legislative activity, and who move on from there without having to challenge any of those procedures. Now, what we have in 2020, when the 14th Emir was deposed, was also the same procedure that was actually elected by the sitting governor, Abdullahi Ganduje, who, under the legislative power exercised by the House of Assembly, deposed the 14th Emir and then banished him to a kingdom known as Awe. The 14th Emir, in obedience to the law, left quietly and went to the very location he was banished until an order of court actually vacated or quashed that procedure of banishing him completely from the territory of Kano. And then when he returned from the kingdom where he was banished, he moved straight to Lagos and then resided there until the current activity. There was no issue. Now what we have as of today is that there is a legislative activity that has taken place empowering the governor to remove and reappoint. And he has exercised his power as bestowed upon him by the laws made by the House of Assembly. And what was expected, I must say, is that the actors behind those activities were actually supposed to obey all the legislative activities and the executive actions that followed without contention.
Now,
should there be no contention?
Mr. Johnson, I hate to cut you, but I've just been informed that our correspondent, Emmanuel Bagudu, who was live and has been covering this story, is joining us now. Emmanuel Bagudu is News Central's correspondent, and we understand he's joining us from Abuja. Emmanuel, if you can hear me, good morning to you.
A very good morning.
Thank you so much for coming on. Please give us an update on what you witnessed so far at the proceedings on Thursday, at the courts on Thursday.
Yes, it was all a feeling of anxiety. Remember that very Thursday, everyone was expected that a ruling would take place, but it never did because there was a heated argument, as we reported, because in fact, a lot of respondents have been included in the suit. The Aminu Baba, who actually made the petition, who is the applicant, has a total of up to 5 to 6 respondents. Respondents are the Kano State government. In fact, he included the DSS and the police who are the respondents. Quite surprising because the police have actually been obeying the court order. If you remember very well, when the two federal high court injunctions were made that actually said that status quo should be maintained, we saw the police, going to protect Aminu Adobayoro. So the respondents were many, so the argument was very heated. That was why judgment didn't take place that day. So judgment has been ruling has been fixed for 13th of June. So there is a feeling of anxiety, and to make it clear, once on Thursday, which is 13th June, we have a ruling, then we will know who the emir is, because the issue of jurisdiction now states that if the Federal High Court says that it has jurisdiction, it simply means that that initial judgment, that initial ruling the Federal High Court made that status quo should be maintained, simply means that Adewere remains the area. So that's what the anxiety is all about, because the supporters of Ado Bayero and that of Sanusi are just anxious to see this happens. Because if at the end of the day jurisdiction is confirmed that the Federal High Court has a jurisdiction over the case, which means the case will continue to be heard, and then Ado Bayero remains the emir until the case is determined by the court. So that is the feeling of anxiety all over, and we hope that by Thursday everything will be calm. If you remember very well, there was tight security, heavy security surveillances on that day because of the anxiety coming from the supporters of the two emirs. So that is
Well, Emmanuel, want to say thank you very much for joining us. It's already time for us to go into our news, but let's thank the gentlemen who have joined us. Emmanuel, thank you very much. And of course, Mr. Johnson, thank you for also taking out time from your Saturday schedule to be with us to explain the instance here, talking about the Emirate tussle in Kano State. Thank you, gentlemen.